Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast weekly show brought to you by Join Cycling. I'm really excited to get back into the weekly shows, Benji.
Same.
The weekly show by Join Cycling. We get freedom to talk about what we want, not doing race recaps. I've been missing it, actually.
Like, genuinely, this morning I woke up and I was like, okay, I'm gonna take breakfast. I'm gonna take a toast with avocado or a bagel with avocado. And halfway through creating my bagel, toasting my bagel, I was like, what would Patrick think, analyze about my strategy to go for the bagel instead of the toast? I've been missing you, my friend.
A strategy of bagel instead of toast. I never have bagel. I always have toast. I don't really. What do I eat? I had chia seed pudding. Yeah, yeah. Utter work nonsense. Chia seed pudding with blueberries. Apparently,
Are you
it's the
still
kick.
doing the water in, what is it? Was it cereal or what, the other thing?
Yeah, cereal with water. Yeah. So like, if you have cornflakes or if you're if you're trying to get lean, you go water in the cereal. You're flying.
Because it's disgusting and you don't eat it. No shit, you become lean.
Canyon systems. So anyway, weekly show. We'll be wrapping up the Tour of Guangxi, both men and women's. There's also the Italian post Lombardia races. RedBull apparently maybe co-sponsoring Tudor. The Pidcock transfer roller coaster is still moving. There was a typical firing at the end of the season, or a rider who's transferring out of the team. Arkea financial problems, and also the applications for licenses for next year. So lots to talk about in this weekly show. We are also going to do a mega transfers roundup number 3 or 4 on Wednesday because there's been so many transfers to talk about, and yeah, we wanted to have a whole podcast dedicated to it. But Guangxi, Benji, did you wake up early enough to watch this?
Fuck no. I watched a recap of the races the day after, I'm afraid. And maybe that doesn't make me a true believer of the Tour of Guangxi, but it's end of the season, man. I've entered the off season with my mind as well. But I've actually, it's weird. It's been a few weird stages in there. Like the first stage, Lionel Tamigno winning was not on my bingo card. Like I know he can sprint. I know he's a bit of a versatile sprinter, but to see him win that sprint, despite there not being like the top sprinters at the start line in Guangxi, wasn't expecting that. Second stage, Wout van Geluwe. Come on, try and say it. Have you learned?
Wout van Geluwe.
A true professional, my friend. A true professional. You are Flemish deep in your bones already. Like, I also wasn't expecting him to win basically a sprint.
Just NPC. Just fucking Flemish NPC also works. What is it with Quickstep? Every Quickstep Neopro, you never heard of them. They always each win a race first year. Always. I don't know if Gil Helders won a race, but Manuel Lamperti, Wout van Geluwe, they always win.
Yeah. I don't know the secret, my friend. I don't know the secret. I don't think Helders has won one, but he got... he won the youth classification in the Tour of Slovakia. Is that something... Does that count?
No, it does not.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. You've been a disappointment, Gil Helders, even though he's actually been a pretty solid rider this year.
He's been pretty good, yeah.
I would say. Then 2 victories from Ethan Vernon. I would argue that's something I would more expect because Ethan Vernon, he's not a top sprinter, but he's been pretty prominent in winning these level of sprints throughout this year and in the past, I would say. Didn't he also win a stage at Tour of Britain?
Yeah, he's won. He's kind of he's a mini Caden Groves, I would say, at this point. That's what they got him on the farmer schedule, and he's cleaning up some sprints like that. You know, there's no other sprinters here. It's a World Tour race, but Tour of Britain, I can't remember. Ooh.
Got second, third, and fourth at Tour of Britain. For some reason, I imagined him winning one. Yeah. Manier was on fire in that race.
There was one GC stage. It was the very steep uphill finish to Nong La, like 1,400 meters, 15%. And there was one man in the Vuelta we saw was really, really good on the Rampas in Humanas, and he was by far the strongest here. Leonard van Eedveld, he wins that stage after UAE tried to roll him with Wellens and Sivakov. He had to do a lot of work. He played it pretty cool. He and Onley went head-to-head. They were the two strongest. And really nice to see the two, like 23-year-olds or less going head-to-head. But Van Aert came out on top, beating only by 2 seconds. He also then takes the GC because the next day was a sprint stage and there was no changes there. So Van Aert wins GC, his second of the year, World Tour 1 week race, both the UAE Tour and the Tour of Guangxi at the end of the year. Only second, Baudin. Third, Lefebvre actually attacked as well. The man, that's a name I haven't heard of for a long time, Victor Lefebvre. So Decathlon 3 and 4. Sivakov 5th, Aliotti 6th. And that's all. Govakar won the final stage. So Slovenia on top.
Wait. He won a stage in Tour of Britain. I think.
Yes, he did.
Ha! I got one right. So I'm proud of that. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, he wins the final World Tour race or stage of the year. So that's, emblematic of the season with Slovenia. And the 24-year-old sort of misc sprinter, I would say. He's got a deal actually to the end of 27. Bahrain have extended him. So they clearly have faith in him, maybe in the post-Bauhaus era, if Bauhaus does a 2-year from 25 to 26. But yeah, Tour of China, I'd say these two guys, Onley and Van Aert, Benji, this has been their breakout seasons. Just want to, what do you see for these two?
Well, first of all, when it comes to Van Aert, we've seen him in the first week of the Vuelta being quite prominent. He almost won that stage against Roglic, but then celebrated too early. Whether he would won or not, who knows? But he was playing a role in GC for that first week. And then in the second and third week, it kind of all fell in the water when it comes to Van Aert. I think it's fair to say. I think he abandoned the race as well. But it's not just that. If we take a look at his entire season, then we see a rider that has won 2 World Tour stage races, albeit Tour of Guangxi is not the highest rated World Tour race in the world. I'd say UAE Tour version is more prominent there. The fact that he won UAE Tour, especially because it was on bonus seconds, that was a pretty special herb on top of the winning dish. But I think the next step, I think he'd want to build on first of all, try and see whether it also works in the higher end World Tour races. Like, well, when you say Paris-Nice, when you say Tirreno Adriatico, those kind of races, can he then compete for a top 5 in GC? That's also a question I have. Or are you more looking at a Catalunya and a Romandy, which I think might be more viable right now?
For Van Aert?
Yes.
Oh, I think he'd be good in Paris-Nice, I gotta say. If there's a TTT, the problem is the TT, I would say.
Yeah.
But he's really on the 10-minute climbs, only 2. Yeah. Van Aert looks really, really good. Now, he has a contract with Lotto till the end of 2026. What is the status with Lotto, Benji? So we will touch on, they submitted their UCI documents, and it just says Lotto. There's no co-sponsor. Now, maybe that doesn't mean they don't have one. They might have asked the UCI to not put it in so they can announce it formally. That's very common. So that doesn't mean they don't have a co-sponsor for 25. But what's been the word around them? Because there's been sort of murmurings that, this guy's free to leave. But actually, no one has left. It's not like Arkea.
Yeah, it's a very interesting conversation about Lotto, because it's hard to know from an external viewpoint what's actually happening internally in the team, because we do hear the occasional Wilderflits article or Bram van de Capelle on HLN talking about the fact that leaving, as a consequence, who's going to replace that? Roughly, was it 6 million? I think the gap that was opened up. Now today there was an announcement on their social media by Lotto themselves that sponsor caps is extending. Is that a sponsor that remains at the budget they were at? Is that a sponsor that brings more money on top of what they already were bringing in? Who knows that? Like, they know that internally, we don't know that. I would say, based on the amount of talk that there has been, there probably wouldn't be any smoke without there even being a little bit of fire internally. I do think there's a bit of uncertainty also inside the team. I don't think it's an absolute disaster, but it's probably something that needs to be taken care of within, not necessarily this off-season, to be honest, because as long as they keep the riders they currently have, which is Van Aert, which is De Lee, which is Van Gils, if those three stay, then I see no trouble in town, you know?
Yeah, that's three Belgian riders who, outside of Remco, maybe Thibaut Naesen and Van Aert, are some of the most exciting Belgians, and they got three of them. So, and Van Aert, I think is going to be, he's really good.
And Van Gils, 2,500 UCI points in a year now. And then De Lee, who arguably didn't have an amazing season because his preseason wasn't great, also 2,400 whatever UCI points this year. I'm sorry, but a lot of teams would sign to have a rider of 2,500 UCI points per season. They've got two this year, and it wouldn't shock me if they do it again next year, because while Van Gils was close on a lot of occasions, he might be closer next year on a lot of occasions. So as long as they can secure or keep the rider secure that they have secure financially, whether that's financially viable with what they currently have, then I see no trouble. And is it a disaster if we see a Jarno Widar leaving or something and not necessarily going to Lotto? It's not great, but it's no disaster either considering this, because their goal right now is to move back to World Tour. And with Van Gils, De Lee and Van Eetveld, I see that perfectly possible. Now, eventually they'll have to fill up the gap that Destiny left though.
Yeah, and there's also Lotto maybe need to work a little bit differently with co-sponsors. That was sort of the report, I think, that they want more control or marketing than the money they're putting in. But before we get to the women's results in China, a word on our show partner, Join Cycling. And this is an important note for all of us, even some of the pros. I know some of the pros are listening to this. I know you're on the beach in... Are you on the beach in Madagascar or wherever? I don't know, wherever they go.
This is a green screen.
It looks like the UK to me, but your cycling season starts today. October isn't the month you'd think that's where I'm going to start my cycling season, but starting now, especially with a training plan like the Lanterne Rouge plan on Join Cycling, which isn't that intense. It's not hard workouts every single day. Training early before your goals actually keeps your fitness from decreasing, so you don't have to start from a low base level again. In fact, that's what I heard Geraint Thomas talking about on his podcast. He was like, perversely, he's doing training now so that when he actually starts training, so then he'll take a couple of weeks off or something, but then he's not starting from a way lower fitness level. It's something important for me to remember, not to be like taking 6 months of training, then take 2 months off, and then your fitness goes into the floor. Join has so many different plans. Maybe you've peaked and done an intense plan for a summer event, a criterium, whatever, gravel race, whatever. There's plenty of plans on Join Cycling, which are a lot more tranquilo, as I like to say, just to keep your fitness ticking along. So when you do want to ramp it up, your body is ready to go. What you're planning on, a Tay-Day KOM, Benji?
Well, a KOM, I'm not sure about that one. I'm not gonna get like the record of everybody that ever climbed the Tijden volcano in Tenerife, but December, roughly the 15th, I'll be going to Tenerife. Flights are booked, and about 2 years ago, I climbed the 10-kilometer climb, my first actual climb ever as a recreative cyclist, an amateur cyclist in Tenerife. And I said that day, I want to climb Tijden one day. In December, it's the day. 50 kilometers uphill. I'm going to perish. The first 10 kilometers is the hardest, but I opened the Join Cycling app. I filled it in as my goal, filled in the elevation, the date, the length of the ride, etc. So they know, the app knows what I need to train for. Now it's giving me rides that I need to follow to be able to be my best self by the time the Tijden volcano hits. So hopefully that all works out in December.
I'm looking forward to seeing that. I've also, I'm preparing for the assault on Corkscrew Road when I'm back in January. Why are you laughing? It's the most prestigious climb.
Nah, Wollonga Hill clears easy.
I like Corkscrew a little bit more than Wollonga, actually.
You were literally going to say after Wollonga Hill right there, so you've got no argument anymore. You sold yourself out here.
True. And they don't do Corkscrew next year in TDU. Anyway, go check out Join Cycling through the link down below, or indeed if you're, like many of you are users already, check out the different plans you could do to keep you going in your season. Your season starts today. Women's Guangxi and Chongmin Island, Sarah Tizzett WNT, just like they did last year, went crazy with the farming. They won every single race, I think, with Sandra Alonso, Marta Lach. She won GC at Tour of Chongmin Island and 2 stages. The first stage they won with Marlene de Zolta. They also went 1, 2, 3 in half the stages. So they, I think, scored 2,000 UCI points. More, maybe.
Roughly. And most important, well, not most importantly, but also importantly, they had one World Tour victory, women's World Tour victory before this race, before these Chinese races arrived. And that was a Tour de France Femme stage with Cédric Kerbaol. And now they've got 6 at the end of the week. So that's a lot better than a lot of other teams if you look at the amount of women's World Tour victories for teams.
This is a bit silly. Like, we can say men's Tour of Guangxi is not so serious, but I would say to you that Oscar Onley and Leonard Vadenfeld going against each other on a 5-minute watt per kilo test is pretty high-level stuff when you look at what those two are going to do in the future. On the other hand, Tour of Guangxi Women's is a World Tour race. It has 4 World Tour teams. And 2 of them are Human Powered Health and Roland, who are not the strongest. So, and Sarah Tizzett, indeed. So...
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it because we haven't seen the... Like, we know that if we look at women's cycling, that, yes, there's people fighting for automatic wildcards. There's people fighting against relegation, whatever. There's teams fighting for potential pro team applications that we'll get into a bit later. Like, looking at all those factors, is it because we haven't hit the, oh, damn, relegation is such a big thing in women's cycling yet that we don't see as many women's World Tour teams panicking about that and necessarily going to these races?
Maybe, yeah. Maybe that's why Sarah Tizzett makes sure they go, because they're on the... They are conscious of that. It just must be the economics. Must be so expensive to go. I don't know what the organisers cover, but I think 4 World Tour teams being there is not... They need to have a revisit. Like, I'm all for having races outside of Europe. I like having races outside of Europe, but it should be
Australian.
It should be .pro status if that's going to be the start list every year. In Italy and then Japan, a busy man traveling here and there. Nilsen Paulus, speaking of UCI points, he won Piemonte in a solo, but he wins the Japan Cup road race. Huge gaps here. It basically looks like to me, well, I don't know how this actually happened because I didn't watch it, but there was a group, I assume, of Paulus, Van Wilder, Morich, Woods, and Van Sevenot was probably working with Van Wilder. If I know that, maybe I should watch it because I'll see what Mauri did. But anyway, Paulus wins a sprint of those 5 riders. He's pretty nippy, actually. Nilsen Paulus, he won San Sebastian like that. There was a group behind 4 minutes. A gap of, it's a 144k race, so 4 minutes behind. Looks like there was Julien Bernard, and then Axel Zungler, 7th. Talented medium-age French rider. Tom Schurns 8th, Naruka 9th, Zambanini 10th. So, yeah, Paulus had a nice end of the season, Benji. He's racked up in the month of October. He has racked up 700 UCI points, which is about 65% of his total for the year.
And also, I feel like Meurice getting third at Veneto Classic, second at Giro del Veneto, 5th at Gran Piemonte, 10th at Lombardia.
From the break.
Man has a solid.
From the break.
Yeah, that is very true. From the early breakaway, the large breakaway that existed, that's also very valuable. It's around 500 UCI points as well in the last 4 races he's done this year. So that's also quite intriguing to see from Meurice. It shows that he's also got something under his belt still when it comes to his own results and isn't just there. Because I swear, when he rode for was it for Wanty that he came second behind Dylan Teuns on Planche de Belfia? 2018? Am I done?
If you think I know what this guy did in
Trying to figure it out.
In the Tour?
Yes. Third on Planche de Belfia in 2019. Behind Dylan Teuns and Ciccone.
Yeah, he's pretty good climber.
The memories are real.
Him and Jimmy Janssens are like the journeyman climbers of Alpecin, and Yeah, he's been really, really strong in October. We saw an interview yesterday, speaking of Zangler, an interview from Cedric Vasseur, who said Zangler can, good luck to him fetching the bidons for Wout van Aert. So.
He's so salty, man. I'm sorry. Like,
oh, let him be salty.
So childish. Like, we've seen childish behavior also from the other side, like from Visma to Groupama, etc. Back in the day. But like, and now from Cofidis to Visma, like, God, the team managers have a special place in my heart. They can make the sport more interesting by just talking nonsense all the time.
They get team managers get so, like, it's a business at the end of the day. So when people leave the team, it's just normal. Like, the rider's going to leave the team. So
don't say that. We want to hear the drama. Come on.
True. Anyway, he ain't gonna be fetching bidons. I don't think. Other races, Magnus Cort won Veneto Classic, which was actually quite a nice race. It had a cobble climb. I watched it yesterday. Very, very interesting. UAE washed ? Because she didn't win some of his later Giro del Veneto or Veneto Classic. But yeah, Gregoire looked very good, and Zana and Pellizzari was really impressive in all these races. So Bora have a really good rider in his hands. But it means UAE end the season with 81 wins, which is, I don't think breaks HTC's record, but certainly makes them the best team of the year by far. You don't need to analyze too much to see that. Magnus Cort, would you say the return this year for UNOX has been what they expected or wanted, Benji?
What do you mean the return?
Like for the big signing, for the race results he's provided. I would say it. He scored more UCI points than he normally did.
Yeah, I think UCI points wise, he secured 1,250 roughly UCI. I think that's valuable. But I also think he did get a World Tour victory. Like, he did win a stage at Critérium de Dauphiné, which I completely forgot about. That was a stage with the fog, I think, if I recall correctly. So that's a pretty prominent win. Would they have wanted a Tour de France stage win? Yes, but those don't come for free. So a Dauphiné stage win is the second best thing you can get for that. So I'd say it's a successful transfer based on the fact that was their first World Tour victory for the team. So he's still under contract next year. Maybe he wins the Tour de France stage next year. It's possible. It's Magnus Cort. And I'm mostly interested by the fact that he's won a one-day race. I'm sorry, but is it me or was Magnus Cort like viciously not good at one-day races in my head?
He hasn't won a one-day race since 2017 in February. So he's been nearly 8 years without winning a one-day race, and that was Almeria. This is the highest level one-day race he's ever won. He's never won a dot pro or above one-day race before this. So you are correct in that.
Interesting. That's very intriguing. Maybe this is a moment of change in his career. Maybe he can start chasing the Italian Classics next. Because on paper, his kind of rider is good for the Italian Classics. He can climb better than most people would expect, and he's got a sprint at the end of the day.
It makes no sense, right? Like Sanremo, he should be good at. He can.
Is it the distance?
I don't know what it is, because he should be able to absorb the Cipressa fine. He's a really good climber. Then he's the perfect weight and power profile for the Poggio, where he has to do 450 watts for 5 minutes. And he can sprint.
And next to that, if you consider the fact that, okay, maybe it's the fact that he needs to ride himself into a stage race to then find his way to a victory eventually, well, just simulate 4 Milano Sanremos before actual Milano Sanremo arrives.
Yeah, or do the Mallorcan races. Yeah, so it is strange. It is strange how, I don't know, maybe it is like the long races that he can't do, and that Veneto Classic was under 200Ks. It was a pretty hard race. So
yeah, and
he was in the early breakaway, I think. Maybe he just, I don't think I think he's not that good in positioning and handling. He also, the way he sits on the bike looks very strange.
Sure.
Maybe it's that, because he won this also from the break, where he's just rotating through with three guys at the end.
Potentially true. because positioning will matter on the Cipressa and the Poggio. Anyway,
yeah, it's all positioning. It's all positioning. Red Bull, Benji.
Yes, let's talk about Red Bull. So, first of all, we know Red Bull as a team, as a sponsor that joined Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe and took a majority share in the team. So, it's a very prominent investment for them. And we know that in other sports, they have, for example, in football, Red Bull Leipzig, I think, and Red Bull Salzburg as two football teams in the, is that German and Austrian league? Am I dumb? Is Salzburg German or Austrian? It's Austrian, right?
Austrian, yeah. It's where Mozart was born.
And then in F1, I was told they have Red Bull, and they've got B-Tech Red Bull called Toro Rosso. And I've also been told that they've used both teams to improve the teams of the bigger team in F1 at some point in recent period. But now we get the announcement, or at least it's not even an announcement. It was like an article from Bram van de Capelle, who's been writing amazing articles, by the way, the last year. Like, I feel like half the articles we bring up are him in this podcast. So definitely check out his work. We're not just bringing you his work. Definitely check out the articles himself on highland.be as well. So it's an article about Tom Pidcock and how his transfer, or the transfer that was rumored to be, is kind of blocking up the transfer market. Q36.5's interested, but maybe Tudor might also be interested because the team of Cancellara, and I quote, is close to having Red Bull as co-sponsor, which could open doors to get Pidcock. And I'm looking at that, and I'm thinking, well, the Red Bull is the majority shareholder or stakeholder, whatever you call that, in Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe now. They would also be co-sponsor in Tudor Pro Cycling. Firstly, a lot of people might instantly react, okay, why is that a problem? Specialized is sponsoring multiple teams with their bikes. Every bike brand is doing that. Equipment brands are doing that. For me, this is a different level. For me, this is like a main sponsor of a team that also owns the team, that is co-sponsoring a different team. Yes, there's different branches within Red Bull, but I don't give a fuck about that. It's still the same mother company above it on paper in my head. So I feel like there's an issue here in my head.
Yeah, because they're just going to be a co-sponsor of Tudor. But it's different, like they're in the same league. It's not like the football example. So I don't know how that will work. I think there might be UCI rules prohibiting, well, so Little Trek, Trekker own the team or a title sponsor of the team. Could they then be a bike supplier to another team? I think so. So is this kind of that scenario?
Are they?
Well, they're not. No.
Which other bikes ride on Trek?
No, they're not.
So,
but in theory,
have they been stopped by that rules-wise?
It's not like football where there's transfer payments. So the problem with clubs in the same league being owned by the same owner with the transfer payments, that would be really strange. But yeah, how would it be if then they join Tudor and then Red Bull are like, actually, this year we want Mark Hirschi to ride for Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe, and then next year he goes back to Tudor because we want him to, like, if they sort of have an interest in both teams.
But then Tudor, as sponsor, would not be happy with that, obviously.
No. And this is
so
not
I think
ownership.
That's... Yeah, if Red Bull owned both teams, there'd be a major issue, in my opinion.
Yeah. So we'll see how this develops in F1. There is the same. This happens in F1 with Red Bull, so it's the same model they're trying to do. Or you could say that maybe they're looking at it like Tudor are in a different league because they're in the pro. They're not a World Tour team. In reality, in cycling, it's a fictional division, really.
Yeah.
They're all in the same races, so especially if Tudor get the wild cards for 26, which they are looking good for, as well. So we'll see. That was the first little drop from Bram, but I haven't really heard anything else. Speaking of Red Bull, or at least a Red Bull athlete, the Pidcock transfer roller coaster maybe has ground to a halt because we had. So what's the story we had? In summer, Pidcock gave a public statement saying the team's not helping him perform. Then we heard whispers that Q365 were interested in him, that direction. Then he got deselected for Lombardia. That was the grenade. And then kind of nothing happened for a bit. And then Benson has said that INEOS were on a Substack that INEOS have not agreed to any terms of Pidcock leaving, and he will be set to stay, which...
Actually,
yeah.
Is it me or did I read it slightly differently, where the article that Benson put out read like me as if there was a tripartite agreement that they were working on between 36.5 INEOS and Pidcock, which, if you don't know what a tripartite agreement is basically an agreement between three parties. INEOS is agreeing that Pidcock can go, Q36.5 is agreeing that they want to have Pidcock, and Pidcock says, sure, buddies, I'm okay with doing this transfer. So that's kind of how that system works. On
it's
paper,
what you have to do under the UCI rules when the rider has a contract with a team in future years. You have to do that.
With a World Tour team, or is that also...
No,
is that also the case for a Conti team?
Even with the Conti rider. I don't know if you have to. I have to check, but it's been
practice.
done. It's been done this year.
Okay. I know what you're hinting at, but anyway. So when it comes to this one, tripartite agreement fell through with Q46.5. I read it as INEOS pulling out of that agreement, as if they were actively okay with it, because there was also a line in the article that said INEOS was okay with paying part of Pidcock's salary if he did leave to Q36.5 through that agreement, which that's a crazy line in my head.
To me, it's like, it is crazy, but in American sports, it's quite common. The goddamn New York Mets, we just got eliminated last night. Spoilers, but what a run. What a run. No shame in losing to the Dodgers and to push them to 6 games. My plucky little low payroll New York Mets. That's not true, Benji. Their salary is over $300 million a year for the team.
So no World Series.
No World Series. You're learning.
See. I've tapped into the Mets drama on Twitter yesterday.
Dude, they had the Hawk Tour girl there. They had the Rizzler. I got all the, like. I was looking at like, man, the World Tour teams got to learn from this marketing. Just get all the internet like meme viral sensation people with the game. Also help them win when they were there.
Imagine next year. Next year is the last year of the 3-year cycle, right?
Yeah.
So next year, Tour of Guangxi, we've got a team that is on the brink of being relegated. And they can win and go to World Tour if they score 200 points in the Tour of Guangxi. They invite Hawk Tour girl Rizno. That's what it sounds like to me.
Well, anyway, the reason I bring up the Mets is they signed, they gave 2 of the worst contracts possible. Like, by the way, I'm going to be general manager of the Mets in 20 years because they gave 2 40-year-old pitchers, Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander, like, I don't know, like $200 million guaranteed each.
Yeah.
40 years old. Predictably, they fucking fell off a cliff or got injured. And then what you do is you then trade them and like still pay part of their salary to play for another team because their contract was. Yeah, but so in American sports, it's quite common. It's not common. It's not common with a guy in his prime, let's say.
Yeah, but that defines to me the situation behind the scenes a little bit, because Pidcock wants to leave. Let's say that's a situation, and he's trying to get away. Then INEOS will be like, "Well, why would we pay part of your salary?" Unless they also want him to be gone, you know?
Yeah.
So INEOS want Pidcock gone, is what I read with that sentence too.
On their terms, it seems.
Yeah.
Well, if you want a guy to stay, you don't deselect him from Lombardia, right? Right? Unless it's like a real stick up, no carrot, you're going to go stick approach, and then that'll like bring them in your view, bring them into line for the remaining 3 years. 3 years remaining on his deal, according to PCS. So
is it me?
The deselection for Lombardia is a signal for me that INEOS, that's not trying to repair. That's not an olive branch.
Yeah, but is it me, or are we looking at a situation where I feel like in a week we might have another Benson article coming out with, oh, now this team's interested and INEOS is back at the table to make another tripartite agreement, or you feel like this is the end of the Pidcock transfer rumors for the season?
I don't think it's the end. I don't think it's the end because, you can't. I mean, maybe you can, but how do you walk back from the Lombardia deselection and the Instagram post?
Yeah, but also, if you look at who is the source of this information towards Benson, because that's always the indication, eh? Like, if you read transfer rumors, I'm always wondering, where does the leak come from? Is this from INEOS? Is this from Pidcock's side when it comes to the agent? I don't necessarily know, you know?
It's not INEOS.
Which side do you think it is right now? It has to be the agent of Pidcock, right?
Because INEOS, why would they speak about it?
RQ36.5.
Yes,
that's also an argument.
Q36, I would say definitely the initial article that said they were interested. That would be my guess. They would be more likely to say, yeah, we're interested in Pidcock because they're putting their cards on the table. But we'll see what happens. But I don't think this is the end of it. But I mean, maybe Benji INEOS decide to ride it out. And
that's gonna be a horrible relationship.
What they should have done you should have kept him in Lombardia, and if you really want to flick him, then you keep him in Lombardia. And also that helps you because he's literally your best rider. He's second favorite.
Yeah.
Then you send him to China.
I love how we look at Guangxi as like, send him to prison for a week.
Well, first of all, the race suits him a lot.
Yeah.
And it makes race, like, to me, it makes sense for Pidcock also actually to do China. Secondly, no one's going to write an Instagram post saying, how dare the team send me to a race that suits me. So you get no bad PR.
Yeah, true.
So you avoid
Pidcock's
that.
Still going to feel like shit about it.
Yeah. But you don't get any
do
bad
it without
PR.
the PR. Yeah.
And he could win China. Or podium China. So it's and China has, didn't Patrick Lefebvre say, I wish there was 6 tours of Guangxi so I could send Sam Bennett to all of them.
He didn't say that.
He said something like that.
That's the funniest quote I've ever heard.
He's like, I wish I could send him to every race that Jesus, I shouldn't laugh.
That is insane.
Yeah. Speaking of some acrimonious things also going on, this is becoming, we have about one of these stories every year. We had it with Higuita and Martinez, maybe, or Lawson Craddock with EF. When a rider is leaving the team, they sometimes ride in the other kit early or things like that, or the team is really because the team is still paying them 3 months salary, a quarter of their year salary, October, November, December. So then when they're leaving, the teams are really hot on making sure they're doing the right thing or not, or maybe. And anyway, the news is that the Cofidis women's team has decided to terminate Alana Streak's contract with immediate effect for disloyal behavior that has damaged the image and integrity of the team. There's no article or anything. That's just, that's just that. Well, you heard some rumors about this.
Yeah, I heard some rumors, but I can't remember which race it was about because the rumor that I heard from 2 different people, like completely disconnected, is that she was requested to race maybe Chrono de Nation. I'm not sure which one it was. That would probably fit with the dates, I would say. But instead, she rode Roc d'Azur as herself, for like individually outside of the team instead. And like normally these stories, like we've heard, was it Higuita or Carapaz? Was someone? Was Higuita, right? Or was it Martinez?
Higuita.
Higuita rode with wrong equipment, and as a consequence, EF wasn't happy about that, etc. That's one scenario we had in the past. This feels like a level further, right? If that story is true, I'm sorry, but if you ride a a gravel event, no, a mountain bike / gravel event, whatever it is, instead of going to a race with your team who's paying you to ride races, then I actually low-key understand the team in this situation.
Yeah, I agree. If that is the case, then it's like, well, what did you think? Like it is, like they're paying you for another 3 months. So if that is the case, then I kind of understand it. Speaking of, I guess we should put this in maybe the Lotto discussion, but there's also at the end of the year. Actually, no, we'll speak about it in the application. So the UCI published on UCI Media on Friday, I think, or maybe on Saturday, that the results of the applications for licenses for 2025. So you get a World Tour license or pro license, team license on a 3-year cycle. We all know that. 2023, 24, 25. Everyone has the World Tour license. But every year, you have to sort of reapply for the license and submit what's called the essential documents, which is bank guarantees, insurance, to prove to the UCI that you have the things in place to be a World Tour or pro team.
But first question, we've seen this turn into a disaster with B&B Hotels when they were a separate team with Jérôme Pinot, who was promising a lot of riders a lot of things. Why are the bank guarantees and so forth so late in the season for the next season when teams have on paper already promised to riders that they can sign them and pay them for the next season? Would it not on paper be the other way around, that you need to be able to prove that you can have a team for the next season and then you can start signing riders on paper?
Well, I think the UCI registers the riders under the new rules on October 15. So technically the new transfers won't be registered if you haven't submitted the essential documents. I at least think that's how it works. That's why those two dates match up, because you have to submit the essential documents by, I think, 15 October. And then that new rule change about transfer registration also had the date 15 October.
But in reality, majority of transfers are done.
Yeah, all the like 90% of the big ones are done, yeah. Or 100% of the big ones are done.
If last minute shit hits the fan with your team, you're fucked.
Yeah, and that's also why. So to move on to, so all the World Tour teams that are World Tour teams applied. Only one of them didn't submit the essential documents. That was Astana. So Astana have something missing. We don't know what. Whether it's bank guarantees, whether it's just, it could just be one insurance that will be fixed promptly, or it could be a big problem. We don't know, but
there
yeah,
was a cycling news article that where Vinokurov made a quote that it's nothing serious and he's kind of playing it down. But
okay, but and so the way the rules now work is, when that happens, you can now, as a rider, go and get a contract with another team.
Okay.
If you're an Astana rider. So I'll read from the UCI note. So, in accordance with the provisions of the UCI regs and subject to other regs, the riders of the teams concerned, Astana, may terminate their contracts early, this right being extinguished in the event of subsequent registration of the team. So I don't know if that means that, let's take, for example, Davide Ballerini got a contract for next year. I don't know if that means he could just break his contract and sign with someone else, go back to Quickstep or something. But then if Astana fixed the situation on December 20, Ballerini has to then go back to them. Or if it's like you, or if he leaves, that's it. Even if they do fix it later, he's done it before. But basically this rule is put in place so that riders like Simon Clark with Quebecer, like the B&B Hotels riders, it's so that riders are not waiting and locked into their contracts until December 31, and then December 31 they get told, actually there's no money for next year, and then they have to spend January finding a team. That's why this rule exists.
Okay, but to be honest, outside of Astana not being in that list, there's nothing too surprising in like the World Tour list. We see the teams we expect to be in there. There's only a few changes when it comes to the pro teams of men's cycling, where First of all, I think Poltico Meta becomes Polti Visit Malta. So Visit Malta does a step up when it comes to their sponsorship. TDT Unibet renames to Unibet Titema Rockets, which I think is just a branding thing that they're going with. And I think Luke was the one that looked into it, and they're now French registered, which, in my opinion, and I think Luke concluded similar understandings, that this is something to do probably with Unibet as sponsor, right? Because wasn't there a rule upcoming? There's definitely in Belgium, but also probably in the Netherlands, where from maybe 2025, looking at this, betting sponsors would not necessarily be okay for cycling teams in this fashion as like main sponsor on the jersey, if I recall.
I think, yeah, in the whole of the Benelux, there's those rules. Because I was also thinking, why wouldn't, okay, say it's in the Netherlands, why wouldn't they do a quick step and move to Luxembourg? Also, maybe some preferential tax arrangements in Luxembourg, but they've gone for France, which isn't what I would consider the place of preferential tax arrangements. So clearly, it must be to do with that. Maybe they also mentioned, Benji, maybe it's the vision. Maybe they want to have a French. They want to have a French pro team because that's how you get in. They think they can get invites to the ASO races.
Potentially, that could be true. But one final thing, I will put my Patrick Lefevre hat on, which I don't usually do, because that association is not very likable. Okay, with Patrick Lefevre or his hat.
With his hat.
This is getting weird.
Okay. With his hat.
Anyway,
I
have my Patrick Lefevre hat on. So there's a total ban on betting sponsorships, according to Luke, within at least the BeNe region, Belgium and Netherlands, maybe Luxembourg as well. If you look at that, I'm sorry, but state-sponsored gambling is still gambling. Lotto, I'm sorry, buddy, but your main sponsor is a gambling company. It's not because it's government funded. The lottery, the national lottery, that is not gambling in my eyes.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I agree it's kind of unfair. And Groupama's a bookie, right?
I have no clue. I think yes.
I think it is as well. So
or FDG, Française des Jeux, sounds like jeux, games.
Yeah. FDG is the bookie. So it is weird that there's that carve out for like state-funded lotteries. I think that's a bit strange.
I think so too. I think that's completely unfair, and I think it's shit for the sport if Lotto disappears. But you can't apply the rules to one team and not apply them to another team, in my opinion, either.
Yeah, I remember Lefebvre complaining that with Napoleon was chipping in a lot of money, and then Visma's got Bet City, so there's a lot of the Benelux teams with bookies as sponsors as well.
Does this also count if it's a total ban on betting sponsorships? Then Bet City can't sponsor the Bet City of Steden race. I think that's a one race.
Yeah, it's a Tudor one. I thought next year.
No clue.
So I think in the future, I don't know when it comes in, but yeah, I think that means they can't sponsor the race. So that's a big change in the Netherlands. Maybe they'll have to register in America because America did the thing where it's like betting's banned, everyone does it anyway, legalize it, no regulation. I'm sitting from an Australian perspective as a degenerate, with Australia being like. And England being like 20 years ahead of America in terms of betting sophistication and regulation. I'm like, you guys probably need to regulate this a little bit more. But speaking of money and teams, we should also say for the women's teams, Sarah Tizet said they weren't on the list of World Tour teams. They said it was just like an admin irregularity. They'll get it fixed up, which is good to hear.
And lastly, I need to speak about the Belgian men's pro team as well. Sorry, I have to legally say Wallonie-Bruxelles changes to Wagner Bazin Wallonie-Bruxelles. So
is that bingo? Is that bingo or not?
Yes, Bingwall is out of the name, and Wagner Bazin was the continental team that exists where Stéphane Museo, the son of Johan Museo, is now riding. So that's going to merge. Too. Yes, and they're out. So that's logical. Yeah. You know, everything coincides together here in this podcast. It's crazy. It's like
segues.
It's like what's his name? The guy that makes the Inception movies. Oh no, what's his name?
Christopher
It's
Nolan.
like a Christopher Nolan podcast today. Anyway, that was a very sophisticated joke.
Same production value as well.
But did we speak about the fact that there's now a pro team level at women's cycling as well with Arkea, Cofidis, EF, Laboral, Saint Michel, and Volker Wessels next year on paper as well, with potentially NA Colin Winspace, who honestly before this week were not the most prominent names in my head when it comes to women's cycling teams, but they are rumored to be going to apply for a pro team segment as well. But what were you going to say about money? Because no, I'm intrigued.
Well, no, that was good to see that, especially Saint Michel, Mavic Aubert, they got a co-sponsor, which was, I think, Providence or something. It's like, I don't know.
I think so. It was
and
French,
Volker Wessels. So. It's good they have pro teams because, yeah, Volker Wessels certainly better than a pro team, I would say. But yeah, speaking of money, there was an interview from Emmanuel Hubert, who's the manager of Arkea B&B Hotels, saying that, to quote, the knives are against our throats, meaning finances. And basically, yeah, he said Arkea are in financial difficulty, and I don't know. I've heard that maybe the team will stop at the end of 2025. Certainly, like Arkea are being relegated. They are Astana. I don't know. Yeah. Probably they will be. Astana with the mythical Chinese money. Maybe they buy a World Tour license from a World Tour team that has financial difficulties but has the license, like happened with CCC. But which are Intermarché did. Arkea, with what's happened, they have no chance of scoring the points to stay up. It's impossible, even with Kevin Vokola, because we heard rumors that other riders free to leave, and then when it becomes like a feeding frenzy, when they say, "Oh, there's financial difficulties," then agents get nervous, and so there's Albanese and Champoussin. I think Shampoo is on a decent contract. There's rumors that they're allowed to leave the team, two of their top point scorers. Then you see that the Arkea have made basically no signings, and they have now 23 riders confirmed for 2025, and all their signings so far are from the development team, which also means on a minimum contract for a Neo Pro. And they need 4 more riders that for the minimum, which is 27 for a World Tour team. And the others, they maybe need 6 if it's true that Albanese and Champoussin go. So certainly it appears that there's financial strain there.
Yeah, but like, let me look at it in multiple angles, Because on one end, you've got the fact that for a French team, it's more expensive to have riders in their team. Because you've got the fact that you've got employees and you've got self-employed riders. There's a significant difference in finances between the two. When it comes to employees, they got to pay a lot more, like, what is it, 40%? Like you went through? Like, that's an extra surcharge. I think that's a very valid argument. That's a valid argument that for French teams, that's more expensive. But why is Groupama FDJ able to do it? What Arkea can't? That's a skill issue.
Yeah, I would say that signing Champoussin to a big contract after a Vuelta breakaway win, yeah, it's just bad recruitment. Like, for starters, Demar, I thought it was okay. He's also underperformed. The problem is with Demar, they tried to send him to big races. They didn't farm him as well with the points. But then if you don't send him to your highest paid riders to the big races to win a Tour de France stage, then you're not going to get the sponsor to pay for everything. But then they did win a Tour de France stage in the first week this year with a French rider. So that's probably what you would think. Wow, that's a big boost for them. They should be able to get a co-sponsor easily, but that doesn't seem to be the case in the current economic climate. Now, maybe the case is, Benji, there are just too many French World Tour and Pro teams, and that there's not enough space. I think that's a valid argument. Yeah, so I do think there probably are too many, and I would say I agree. Then that's the problem with any proposed, like, there's rumors of a salary cap. The French teams are operating, in a very different environment to the other teams. Like UAE set up in Switzerland, Quickstepper in Luxembourg, Visma in the Netherlands. Each has different tax arrangements. Each has different labor law requirements for their staff, for their riders. So it is really, the French teams are fighting an unfair battle with that. I don't know how to fix that though.
Question. You mentioned salary cap here for a second. We won't go into it on this podcast, but would it be an idea to do a podcast in the off season where, for example, we gather 5 statements like that? For example, a statement, cycling would be better off with a salary cap, and we kind of debate that statement. We go on to the next statement. Is there something cycling could do better when it comes to safety? Like 5 statements like that or something? I think that would be a good podcast.
That's a pretty good idea, I think. Yeah. Would you...
Creative mind. That's why I'm here.
Yeah. Salary cap. That would be... Yeah, that'll be tricky to introduce. But yeah, there's also other things like safety, which we shouldn't forget. And it's very easy to forget. And you've been banging that drum, Benji, that maybe we should fix safety first before limiting the amount of money some teams are paying riders and staff or on development, etc. So I would say safety should be the number one with the number of deaths in cycling in the last 2 years of young athletes. But yeah, it's usually this happens every year. There's 1 or 2 teams that have financial difficulties. It's some survive, some don't survive, like B&B or your man Jerome Pino. So we'll see what happens.
There was something that I got so annoyed by in Wielerflits when it comes to an article where obviously we had the change when it comes to the 3 kilometer rule this year, where it's now kind of a 5 kilometer rule, 4 kilometer rule, 3 kilometer rule, depending on the day, based on what the organizers decide, if I recall correctly. Now, there was a Wielerflits article in the last month that was discussing the fact that the UCI rule would have a change where if you would fall alone in the last 3 kilometers, 4 kilometers, 5 kilometers, whatever the length is of the danger zone. Sorry, made it sound a lot more cool than it actually is. But if you fall alone in that phase, then you would not get the same time as the group. But I'm sorry, there's so many situations where you can fall alone, where this, for example, okay, this rider, whether it's, Cavendish, takes his corner too wide, causes another rider to crash, that rider crashes alone. According to that rule, the way I read it, then that rider that crashed, who crashed alone, would not get the same time as the group, but if he took Cavendish with him, they would both get the same time as the group. And especially the fact that you can have a mechanical alone and you still get the same time.
Yeah, I don't know why they're changing this, because how are you going to assess it? Yeah, it's because of Roglic. It's because it's like, that's not the answer. You've got the wrong solution to the problem. Yep. Why do you have a 3K rule on a mountain stage? A 212 kilometer mountain stage. That's the problem. Yes.
Because for the people that don't remember, in the Tour de France, there was a stage, the Puy-Marie stage, where Primož Roglic crashed in the last 3 kilometers after multiple mountains and lost time towards Remco Evenepoel, if I recall correctly, on that stage. I think UCI is reacting to this by making this rule where if you crash alone in the last 3 kilometers, you don't get the same time, because Roglic got the same time as Remco that day.
By crash alone, you mean you're the only rider that crashes. You can be in a group.
That's the way I read it. I agree. Yeah. That's the way I read it.
So you should make sure you take out another 3 people when you crash.
That's my conclusion as well from the UCI rule.
Okay. Or when there's 4,500 meter Deneville on a 211 kilometer mountain stage, you don't have a 3 kilometer rule.
Thank you. That's it. That is the solution. How can no one at the UCI think of this?
Because like Schachmann won Paris-Nice because of that rule, right? He crashed of his own fault, and yeah, I can understand it that if you just bin it because you're taking a risk in a corner, then should you get the benefit of the rule? I would say we should just have it. There's too many stages with the 3 kilometer rule. It should. The rule was designed for mass sprints, I think, or I thought. And so it should just be mass sprints. Even if there's a little hill, like if there's hills beforehand, I don't think the rule should be in place, which is common in a Pyrenees style stage. So
I think so too. And I think we had for example, was it Arate that in the Vuelta at some point in the first two stages had a 3 kilometer rule because it had a 1 kilometer downhill over the top of the mountain? I'm sorry, but that's fucking stupid.
Yeah, because riders are going to be, they're racing, like the GC guys are racing, they're pushing it. And if they make a mistake, I don't care whether they're alone, in a group, you should get your own time. And you look at the Tour de France next year, I'll take you to stage 2, which we do know the route already. Stage 2 is a punchy stage finishing uphill. There's 2 steep hills beforehand. That should not have a 3 kilometer rule, this stage.
And like, my point by bringing this up is someone died a month ago in this sport, and that's the fucking rule changes they come up with?
Yeah, exactly. Because it's free. Because it's just like it's just an assessment of time. It doesn't cost anything. The commissaires just interpret a rule differently. So it's easy fix. Doesn't change anything. It'll just mean,
it's not even a safety thing.
Yeah, it's not a safety thing, no. But yeah, I think that's all the news we have for the Monday weekly show. We'll be back on Wednesday for a big transfers roundup. There's a lot of transfers to talk about. We've got the Turnison to Astana and McLeay drama or surprise. Well, to our Vilaflitz as well. That kicked off on their their website. We have Jelta Kransen. I think we got a lot to talk about. To Jaco, the best ranked rider on the continental circuit. I think
women's cycling transfers.
And on that, I heard. I'll finish with this. So the reason I heard why Demi's not been announced, Demi Vollering. Do you think Demi is in status, Benji? Is she in LeBron status, where you can just say their first name and that's who they are?
Yes, in women's cycling, yes.
Demi is. Yeah, she's reached status where it's Demi.
Remco, Jonas, Alex.
Nah, Jonas said that.
Alex Aramburu. Alex.
Oh, Aramburu the guru.
Now to realize I was talking about Aramburu.
Yeah, speaking of Vasseur, that article, the interview he gave, Benji. I think he's your best friend now, Vasseur. I thought you were high on Aramburu. He said, "This is a man you can build a team around." So there's a lot of pressure on your boy Alex next year.
I've got a word to say to Cedric Vasseur. I love Aramburu, but Axel Zangel is better.
Oh, Aramburu, he scored a lot of points this year with not so
Axel
much
Zangel will be better next year. I can tell you that.
Yeah, different riders. But Aramburu is pretty good.
Yeah, but he's pretty good. But what does he do with it?
Oh, you're supposed to be #1 super fan.
Where's the yearly Catalunya Basque Country victory?
He came second in GP Wallonie.
There's 17 GP Wallonies.
Yeah, I know. Every race.
And every single one of them passes the Citadel de Namur. There's no difference.
He won Spanish Natty Champs. It's pretty good.
Yeah, because he's at Movistar with a lot of Spanish riders. Otherwise,
he doesn't win that. Yeah, probably. What I was saying, Vollering. So the reason FDJ haven't announced, as I understand it, is because the bike sponsor is changing. So Specialized will go to FDJ Suez, and the contract with FDJ, and they ride on Benji Lapierre.
Yes.
Awilia? Or they stayed on Lapierre, and the men's team changed. They're two separate orgs, by the way. They're waiting for the bike sponsor contract to finish, and then they announce with the special announcement in a big whole coordinated thing, Demi is coming as well. That's why it hasn't been announced yet, as I understand it, because they don't want to announce her and then do the bike announcement.
Do we do men's cycling transfers on Wednesday, and do we do like a major women's cycling wrap up once Demi Vollering hits the market, or at least exits the market?
We can do some of the big women's ones on Wednesday, because Longo Borghini's like she's a bigger deal than probably, you know, Yelta Cranston.
Elisa.
Yeah.
Is she on first name basis?
No, come on.
Because there's like 10 Elisas in our team. Balsamo.
Yeah, Balsamo is. No, she's ELB. She has an acronym. She has an acronym where you know who it is from the acronym. She's
like MVDP. Mathieu?
Yeah. No, I wouldn't. Mathieu, I wouldn't. I wouldn't say. I would say he's on the.
Has it, you know, in cycling?
Yeah.
In cycling.
But he's
that's for everyone in cycling, eh?
What's the Masked Singer business? Is he really the Masked? So what, is a Belgian Masked Singer show?
The Masked Singer is a show where there's a bunch of celebrities, half of which I've never heard of, or in like a fur fetish suit, and they got to sing on the stage.
A what suit?
they're basically furries for a day, and they're on the stage singing a song, and as an audience member watching the TV, you have to guess who's in the suit. Now, I watched this like at some point 3 years ago. This show for one season because I do occasionally like to hear some good singing, which I gotta be honest, in this specific conversation, it might not have been the case. So there's a squirrel. There's a squirrel guy. Squirrel guy goes on stage. They talk about he's got 100 victories in his sport. We see someone with a rainbow jersey in the back. He's got a wife, 2 children. He's got an accent from the Kempen, which, I'm sorry, but there's only one cyclist from the Kempen. And most importantly, Wout van Aert on Strava in May had an emoji of a squirrel on his Strava ride. And a bit later, he had a ride and he called it the long tail, which a squirrel has a long tail. And lastly, in October, he put on Strava a dancing emoji with next to it, woohoo, which is the song he was singing, or in my opinion, he was singing in the Masked Singer last week as the squirrel. Wout van Aert is the squirrel in the Masked Singer Flanders. There is no denying it.
It's Flanders, not Belgium.
No, it's Flanders. Like, for example, The Voice UK, whatever, it's The Voice of Flanders, and in Wallonia it's called The Voice Belgique. But, on a serious note, Wout van Aert is a squirrel. Next week,
but
he's going to be unmasked as the squirrel. Then he's going to have to sing the same song without the squirrel mask, but in the squirrel suit. So we're going to have loads of memes on Twitter next week. I promise you.
Dude, Van Aert, why are you so good on Strava? He never posts on Instagram.
And most importantly, another factor that it all lines up. The recording was after Tour of Norway, so he was in the shape to do this shit, and he was unable to do the whole season of The Masked Singer, just 2 episodes, which that fits with a cycling season where you're injured first, and then eventually have to go to the Vuelta. So, case closed. The squirrel is Wout van Aert, and next week we're gonna see him singing with his actual face, and I will laugh my ass off.
Cycling has form for this because Nairo Quintana was the Masked Singer in the Colombian version of this.
The lizard.
Yep. And
the gecko.
Maybe Van Aert got the idea to do this from when he went to the Gran Fondo Rigo. Remember his dance moves? Maybe the Colombians were, hey, do the Masked Singer. It's great. Maybe Masked Singer Flanders, Masked Singer Colombia, they have some sort of international trade agreement. I don't know. But okay, that's good. That's good to know.
Did you see the news about Rigoberto Urán? I'm not sure if it was true news or fake news, but he said that after his cycling career, he wants to focus on becoming a professional football player. I'm dead serious. I'm actually dead serious.
Okay.
I don't know where I read this, but I swear it was a real article.
I'm not sure how that's going to go. What is he, 40 years old?
Did I just get rickrolled by a news media platform or something?
I mean, maybe he's going to do that, but yeah, he retires as well end of this year. Okay, that's all from us. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you in a couple of days with a big transfers recap. Until then, ciao.